Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you for having me back on your show.
It's a pleasure, Elizabeth. For those of you who don't know, Elizabeth runs the Girls Guide to Project Management website and the Project Management Cafe, both of which are great places to hang out if project management is your thing. And also, recently, back in the autumn of 2020, Elizabeth's latest book came out. That was Engaging Stakeholders in Projects, published by the Association for Project Management, which we've done an interview on already, and that seems to be quite popular. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. But that fits in well with her wider passion about communicating on projects. I suppose that's what I think of when I think of Elizabeth is project management communications. And getting communications right is so important. And I reckon it all starts right at the beginning, the way you set your tone with the team. And that's why I've invited Elizabeth to talk about onboarding a new team. And I guess to put the emphasis on the communications aspect, should you choose. So, Elizabeth, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, this is great. As you say, I love talking about communication and stakeholder engagement. I find that far more interesting than some of the more technical aspects of project management. So I can talk about this forever. So where do you think we should start today?
Technical procurement management.
I haven't prepared for that.
No, I think like me, you also believe that one way of thinking about a team is as a part of a wider stakeholder group. And because you've written a book about stakeholders recently and you've been thinking about that, maybe you could start by telling us how you think stakeholder engagement and that whole process fits into the way that you manage and engage your team.
Okay. Well, I think the team is a stakeholder, the project manager is a stakeholder. And I know previously that has been a little bit of a controversial view, but I think the world is shifting and we're more aware of the fact that stakeholder as a term is far more all-encompassing. And when we're talking about the stakeholders, we often think about them as just people who support us in our project goals. But when I was writing the book, and I'm pointing over there because it's on the shelf. It was.
Do you want to show us it? Go on, show us the book.
Okay. Everything else is going
to never miss
an
opportunity to promote your products.
There we go. Here you go. Available in all good bookshops.
Yes. Affiliated link below.
We talk a lot about the project life cycle in project management and how all of that fits together, but actually stakeholders have a life cycle too. And when I was putting the book together, I was trying to work out what does the life cycle of a stakeholder look like in respect of a project. So that for me was a big light bulb moment going off, thinking about how do we actually onboard stakeholders, identify them. Stakeholder management textbooks will tell you to do the stakeholder identification part, but that's just the first part of our engagement activity with stakeholders. And then we have to bring them through and work with them on the project. We engage them early on so that we make sure that they understand what the project is all about and why we need their support. And then we get to great working relationships with them, a bit like we would do if you think about storming, norming, performing. I feel like I've missed a stage. What have I missed?
Storming, norming, performing.
That's it. Good old Tuckman.
The Orman model.
Then we get to the mature engagement where we're working with them in that norming phase and they work well with the team. And then of course their engagement comes to an end. We dissolve our relationship with stakeholders at the end of the project. They might not stop working with the product we've delivered. They might carry on being involved in the process that we've improved or the product we've delivered for them. But actually the project structure comes to an end and their involvement as a project stakeholder stops. So there's that whole kind of arc of engagement, and we need strategies and ways to work with people along the whole range of that so that we can switch out what we do and be most effective.
Great. So how do you kind of apply that directly to team members? Is there anything different or is it just exactly the same?
Well, I think the team member, let's take that down a level then. And maybe should we talk about onboarding a team member? Let's just say you need to get somebody onto your project team. How are we going to get them? In my experience, two main ways that happen are either somebody says, oh, Mike's available, he can work on your project. So I just get you, or I have to ring you and beg, borrow and steal your time so that you can come and support the project. So it's, in the standard process methodologies that you'll read about in things like the PMBOK guide, it's far more like create your team, curate the best skills from across the organization. But in the real world, you get who you get.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to live with. So you might be working with people who have
Yeah,
less.
I want Mike, but actually I've got Elizabeth.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry. I'm the only one that's free. But that's what you have to live with. People who are very, very busy, their managers volunteered them for the job. So that first impression that you make with them is really important, because you want to make sure that they don't hate working on your project, and they very quickly understand the value of the project for them, the value of the project for the organization, what you need from them. So you have to ask yourself, ask for the resource if you need to go out and source that yourself. And I suppose the other thing to think about, and I'm scattering around, I suppose, but sometimes you're asking executives for their support as well.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to engage executives, it's kind of a different conversation to trying to ring up a technical subject matter expert that you have a relationship with already and say, look, I'm working on a project. I need support in this area. I'd love you to be involved with this. Do you have time to support this project? And get them on board, as opposed to bringing on board an executive member of your project team who perhaps hasn't got as much hands-on project experience as some of the, can I call them doers?
Yeah.
Doers of the organization, you know who I mean. And when I've worked with people in that sort of situation, I've had to be much more supportive of helping them understand the project process and what their role needs to be.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of reminds me. One of my hobby horses is, when talking to groups, is about the difference between a goal of a project and the objectives. And I always say the objectives are very transactional. They're bullet points, factual, specific things, often relating to time, cost, quality, and scope. But the goal, I always say to people, take time to craft your goal. Make it really clear what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, because that's the selling piece. That's the piece that you take to, in your example, to executives, to the experts, and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. That's why I want you on board, because it's exciting. If you're not starting to think about your project as something you need to sell, then you're potentially starting off with a harder job than you need.
Absolutely. And it's the why of the project that creates clarity and engagement and alignment, and everybody can get behind it. And on the best projects that I've worked on with the most engaged and most supportive teams, we've had a very clear vision, a very clear why are we doing this? And if everybody can get behind the why, as you say, you're selling the story of the project and what the transformation will bring for the organization or for the people affected. And then you can kind of go, oh, okay, I see how I fit into this. I understand why this is important. I still might not have very much time, and I still might not be hugely excited by it, but I get it. And when you've got that thing that clicks with people, then suddenly all the pieces fall into place. Yeah.
Great. So you've got your team on board, and of course, if you're really lucky, good people will come to you and want to be on your team. I think that's the other way people come in. But I do want to endorse what you said. I come from a consulting background where, in principle, as a project manager, I could phone someone up and say, these are the people I need. Go get them for me. And you were lucky if you got someone to spec, let alone the person you want, because of course the people you want are the people everyone wants.
Exactly.
So having that, so you've got your people on board. What do you need to do to really get them to feel part of the team and to understand the way that you want to deliver the project and the way that you want to communicate with stakeholders and the values? What's the kind of process of bringing that team together?
Well, I would have individual conversations with the people who are joining the team to set expectations about what their individual contribution is going to be. So that would be perhaps if they're leading a work stream, working with them to work out the terms of reference for the work stream. Even if we haven't done the detailed planning and scheduling, we'll have a broad idea of, in order to achieve this goal, we need to deliver these 5 bullet points to like the next level down from the objectives that you were talking about that specifically relate to their work stream. We also want to talk about setting expectations about how we work together as a team. So we have a weekly call on a Wednesday morning. We have one-to-ones. I expect you to do a weekly report, whatever it is that you need from them. And also what you're going to give to them as well, because they can understand that they have to do a certain amount of things, but also as a project manager, you have a duty to them to remove roadblocks, escalate any issues, help them resolve the things that they bring up at those regular conversations so that you can support them too. And I think people don't always see that as the role of a project manager. Not us, project managers understand that, but members of the wider communities that we work with perhaps see project management as more of a organizational and administrative role and less about the strategic benefits that we can give to them in terms of unblocking problems, taking stuff off of their shoulders so we can deal with the politics, things like that. So we can highlight that too.
Yeah, I mean, that plays into my passion for the idea of servant leadership. If you are doing your project well, then actually your team, if you've briefed your workstream leaders properly, they will develop the plan. Your job is really just to facilitate scrunching together the work streams and looking at the gaps and looking at the overlaps. And once they're working to the plan, your job is really just to keep them fed and watered and protect them from the stuff that the organization throws at them. And that can be a really delightful way of running a project. But I've had the same experience as you're implying you've had, which is that people come up to you and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You don't seem to be doing anything." Whereas actually what you're doing is you're creating the environment for everyone else to deliver the project.
Exactly. You're creating an environment for people to do their best work and to be successful. And I often explain it to the people I mentor as the project manager being the glue. We're the glue that holds everything else together. We see the connections between the different things. We let workstream leaders get on with what they need to do, but we're listening for what's happening in this workstream that they might not even know is happening. And we're bringing people together and making those connections and sticking the whole thing together so it works as a cohesive whole. And if you think about your role like that, then all the things that you're doing supporting others is adding value. The fact that you are not there writing lines of code or laying bricks on the building or whatever doesn't diminish the contribution that you're making.
Absolutely. So those are the contributions you are making, which are around supporting the team. We kind of talked about how you onboard the team leaders, the work stream leads. But let's say you're working with a big project. Do you have any thoughts about the desirability, and if so, the method, the approach to bringing the whole team together, that kind of kick-off on board, that, if you like, that marquee meeting that some of us love and some of us hate?
Yes, I would definitely do that. I'd prefer to have our individual conversations first, so that people have a understanding of why they've been invited to this meeting, and then we all get together, we do a kick-off, and we look at getting everyone on the same page with goals, objectives, overarching timelines, because we won't have designed a whole plan by then. But normally, again, I know you're supposed to design the plan and then say when the end date is going to be, but I work in environments where often we're told it's going to be done by October, isn't it, Elizabeth? So we might put up a timeline that says broadly these are the phases we think we have to do, and the target is to achieve whatever by this day. And then we can get to meet each other, understand what everybody does. And then it's also a point to just talk about the challenges and how we're going to work together. I used to set ground rules with teams, but because I've worked with the same people for so long now, we tend not to have that conversation about respectful ground rules, because it's assumed in the way that we all interact, and we've kind of moved past that. But if I was a new project manager in a new organization and the team was very new, I'd want to set ground rules around, I will get meeting minutes out within 48 hours. We will use Slack for our communication channel. We will, be respectful of people who work overseas, and we're not going to expect them to work on their national holidays. Those kind of conversations we would have early on to make sure that everybody was clear.
Good. And what about the length of these meetings? Because I've done some that, or I've been to some that are really just half an hour. We've got to do the meeting, so let's have it, all the way up to a whole day in a dreary room, getting bored out of my mind. What's the sweet spot for you? If you could design the perfect meeting, the Elizabeth Harrin way, what would you create?
Oh, I'll give you that classic answer of it depends.
Go on then. give us a common scenario then. So we can...
Because I've sat in meetings where we've had 20 people and we've kicked off a multi-million-pound project, and it's taken all morning, and it's been brilliantly facilitated, not by me, but by the person who was running the show. And
so who should we be getting?
Clear agenda, talking through all the different points, sharing photographs, bringing up to the front of the room. It was a hospital build, so they were talking about what the architects were doing and how far we'd got through the process, and engagement with the local community and all that kind of stuff. And that really set the scene. And also it was just, you left the room thinking, I know exactly what we're doing. I know exactly why we're doing it. I know what my role is. I know the people now that I have to work with to make this happen. And I am excited to do this work. But I've run kickoff meetings that are an hour because the project has lasted 8 weeks, and we've all known each other from the last project that's only just finished. And so once you've got through the let's just talk about what it is that we're doing and make sure everybody's clear. We think it's going to be these 5 work streams. This is who's in charge of each of the work streams. Does everyone feel happy with that? Yes, we do. Okay. So I would typically on an agenda look at making sure we knew who was in the room, an organizational hierarchy for the project. So I put that up on a slide, and then any common risks, issues that I'd already identified, dependencies to other projects that were happening, so that we were aware of how this project fitted within the ecosystem of the portfolio of the organization. What else? Maybe the budget. I'm big on sharing budget numbers with the team. I don't think that we should bother about hiding those. If they're doing the work, their time is paid for, so they might as well know what's budgeted for.
I agree. I think the principle is you share everything that is useful to the people who are doing the work, up to the point where there is a real confidentiality issue.
Exactly.
I very much know my book. I have one last question for you, and this is one of the tricky things that you get, which is that you've got onboarded your team, everyone's working happily together, and then for whatever reason, and again, lots of different scenarios, but you need to bring in some more people. And what Tuckman taught us in the forming, storming, norming, performing thing is the team's performing, and then someone else comes in, and everything goes back to potentially to a rather nasty storming stage again. So, what tips have you got for onboarding people onto a mature project with a comfortable project team?
Well, the same stakeholder lifecycle applies of identifying the new person you need to bring in, engaging them early, and doing all of that stuff, making sure they know who's doing what. You're doing kind of a mini onboarding activity with that individual, and then also prepping the rest of the team for the switching resource. So it could be because somebody has stepped out of the project team, but the role still needs to be filled and the new person is coming in which case hopefully there's knowledge transfer, handover to happen. Or it could be that there's a new strand of work, which means we just have a brand new person bringing new skills, or just we're busy and we're onboarding people. And again, if that's the case, if someone's picking up work that someone else is currently working on, we need to get that handover of knowledge and getting them set up on all the systems. And then, to be honest, I would have a social event to get people to know each other a little bit better, because teams work better when they've got that level of social interaction and trust. You don't have to be best buddies, but having some kind of, who's that person again? Knowing what they look like, knowing what they sound like, knowing what they're interested in, it all helps. And if we could do a team quiz or go out for the night or something, then that
go out for the night.
Well, back in the day. That. Hopefully this video will have longevity, Mike.
Before I ask you to tell us how people get in touch with you, anything I haven't asked you that you're burning to share?
The only other thing I would say is that those first few days, weeks, moments with a stakeholder is a really good opportunity to make a great impression. You want them to leave. It's not all about what they can do for you, is I suppose what I'm trying to say. Is often we might think, okay, I've done my identification, I've analysed them, they can do this, they're in charge of this, but actually they will perform that role more effectively if they know, like, and trust you. So making a good impression, being easy to do business with, being easy to work with, setting expectations, being nice and polite and reasonable and all that stuff, credible, trustworthy. You want to leave that meeting with them, or leave that conversation with them thinking, she's a safe pair of hands. I can work on this, and this project is not going to dent my credibility because I have trust that it is going to be managed professionally.
As always, my father got there first for me on that one. He always said, you only have one chance to make a first impression, and I think that is absolutely true. And the importance of dealing with every member of your team as an individual first and foremost. Absolutely right. So as always, you and I are on the same page on this. So thank you very much. Elizabeth, tell us how people can get in touch with you, find out what you're doing, engage with the training and the materials you produce.
The best place to find me is at girlsguidetopm.com. As Mike mentioned at the beginning, I also have a community on Facebook called Project Management Cafe. So you're very welcome to come and hang out with us in there too. And you can find me on Twitter, Girls Guide to PM.
Splendid. I'll put all the links down below and on the screen so that people can see those. But for now, once again, Elizabeth Harrin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.